All right, folks. Big game in Acrisure this weekend. Steelers, Dolphins, Monday Night Football. Both teams must-win game. And here's the thing. I don't know how many people have checked that forecast on Monday night. Folks, it is going to be freezing cold. We're talking about a temperature in the teens. And honestly, that plays directly into the Steelers' hands. We've talked about it. They have not been good enough on the ground these last few weeks. They just simply cannot run the ball. They cannot run. But there's a few things that the Steelers have on their side going into this matchup. For one, Derek Harmon, he looks like he is going to be back out there. He is going to practice this week. It might come down to a game time decision, but I'm telling you this, that extra day of practice, that extra day to rest up, to get in there, to do what you need to do as a player, it is going to work wonders for the Steelers and for Derek Harmon. Here's the other thing. The Miami Dolphins, obviously, Miami, it's not Pittsburgh. It's warm right now. It is completely different climate. But Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins have quite literally never won this game on Monday night. And I don't mean that it's a Monday night game. I don't mean that it's a primetime game against the Steelers. What I mean is the Steelers are going to be playing a game where it is below 40 degrees. It is going to be that cold in Acrisure. The Miami Dolphins have never won a game with Tua Tagovailoa where it was 40 degrees or colder at kickoff. And if you think that that's not a big deal, that's not a made-up step, folks, look no further than Tua Tagovailoa. The Dolphins offense, sure, they want to run the ball. They want to go out there, use that RPO scheme. We've seen that work wonders in recent weeks. But the truth is, you're going to have to throw the ball at some point in the game. And Tua, where is he from, folks? Tua is from Hawaii. Where did he play football? Alabama. Alabama alum. It gets cold in Alabama. It's not that cold. It's not the teens in Acrisure Stadium in December. How about the fact that he now, obviously, is a quarterback in the Miami Dolphins? It doesn't ever get below 40 degrees in Miami. You have to go out there. He is going to have to play well in those cold elements, in that environment. And obviously, we know big time, huge revenge game. Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith, they are going to be on one. They are looking to come out here and show why the Dolphins were wrong to trade them to Pittsburgh. And that truly is why you absolutely, positively, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, have to hammer DK Metcalf against this Dolphins secondary. Because, folks, we can talk about how much better they look and what what Minka Fitzpatrick has done for that defense and that revelation coming in and playing the nickel. But, guys, they have two corners out there, Jack Jones, Rasul Douglas, Aaron Rodgers. He knows them very well. That's a revenge game in itself. Well, obviously, was a teammate with Rasul back in Green Bay. Jack Jones once picked off Aaron Rodgers a pick six and trotted into the end zone. We know he is going to be targeting Jack Jones. We know that DK Metcalf needs to get out there and needs to do what he did against the Ravens, because it's not a coincidence that when he comes out and gets 12 targets, he gets nearly 150 receiving yards. He has 7 receptions. Folks, DK Metcalf has been a revelation when the Steelers consistently get him the football. It makes no sense, in my opinion, that it's taken until week 14 for Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin and Aaron Rodgers to realize why they traded for this man, why they paid him a contract that at the time made him a top 3 paid wide receiver in the league. He is the Steelers' offense. The last 2 weeks, last week against the Ravens, they didn't even get over 40 rushing yards on the ground, and that was with a healthy Jaylen Warren. It's true. It's fast. They know that when DK Metcalf gets the football, they have a chance to win games. You add on the fact that it's going to be cold. You got a corner like Jack Jones who wants to gamble, who wants to pick off Aaron Rodgers, get a pick six again. You go out there, you run double moves, you make sure that he has no shot at doing that. And it's going to take a full team effort. Aaron Rodgers, he's no stranger to playing in the cold. He's been in Green Bay when it's been in the teens. He can throw the ball. His velocity, honestly, last week, that was the best Aaron Rodgers that we have seen since he joined the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not talking about the stats. I'm not talking about what his QBR rating or what his quarterback rating was or his QBR. I'm talking about the eye test. He looked calm. He looked poised. He looked confident. He went out there and he played the best brand of football that we have seen him play with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that leads me to how the Steelers stop the Miami Dolphins, because I'm not going to lie. You guys know as well as I do. These last 2 weeks, they have been horrible on the ground. We're talking about over 200 yards in each of the last two games, over 466 yards in the last two games. Folks, that's not the Steelers defense. That is not. The fact that, as we talked about in the open, that you have to have Derek Harmon out there to go ahead and make sure that your run defense isn't water through a sieve, that is concerning. There's no doubt about it. You can't be so reliant on a rookie defensive tackle that if he's out of the game, you might as well just pound the rock. You might as well just let teams run all over you. That is a major concern. Keanu Benton, honestly, has not taken that step, has not grown the way that the Steelers had hoped for. Cam Hayward, he's a little bit down this year, but he's shown in the big moments that he can go out there, he can make plays still at a high level. The real, and I really mean the real test, though, is going to be how the Steelers play on the perimeter. Because if you go back and watch that Bills game, the Bills, unlike most teams, they said, guess what, TJ Watt? We're not scared of you. We are going to run directly at you. Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, we don't think you can set a hard edge. Well, guess what? The Miami Dolphins, yeah, they're going to run some inside. They're going to want to get a little bit of gap, a little bit of power. They are going to hammer the outside zone. Mike McDaniel is a Kyle Shanahan prodigy. He wants to run it to the perimeter. He wants to force Joey Porter Jr. and James Pierre and the Steelers safeties to come up and tackle, because he believes his tight ends and his tackles will do enough to set a hard edge. That's where TJ Watt, that's where Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, maybe even Jack Sawyer, they have to come in and they have to play at a high level. So those are your three main talking points. What I'm interested to see is what exactly the Dolphins do with Minkah Fitzpatrick, because we talked about why the Steelers have let him go in the past, why the Steelers let him go and what he did for them in the past. Honestly, primarily a free safety, right? Middle field, center fielder. They assumed correctly, honestly, that he was no longer making the plays requisite of what he was being paid. That those big-time splash plays, those interceptions over the middle, those forced fumbles, those fumble recoveries, they were no longer at will. They were just coming, really, honestly, you look at his last season in Pittsburgh, he only had one turnover. So I get it. You trade him away. But now the Steelers are going to see what they're missing, because ever since he's moved to that nickel role in Miami, he has been sensational. Go back, look at the Saints game. Guy took a pick six, over 100 yards, ended the game when they wanted to come back in Miami. Minkah Fitzpatrick, we know how much he loved the Steelers. We know how close he was with Mike Tomlin. We know what he was as a Steelers player. He is going to be on one. He is going to be motivated. He is going to be ready to go. And that is why Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith, Minkah Fitzpatrick, they make for a tremendous revenge game on Monday night. And folks, I don't know how many people are really talking about this, but this is honestly a must win for both teams. If you're the Steelers, yeah, sure, you're 7-6, you're atop the AFC North, everything looks good right now. The Ravens are right behind you. The Bengals are not eliminated. Yeah, they only have a 3% chance of going out here and winning the AFC North outright. But if they get hot, they win out. The Ravens' schedule's tough. The Steelers got to go to Detroit. The Steelers have to play Baltimore again. Anything could happen. This is a must-win game for the Steelers. There's no doubt about it. You have to control what is going on with your destiny in this league. And then the Dolphins, they somehow, some way, fire their GM. Folks, they didn't fire a head coach. They didn't make a quarterback change. They didn't change up their defensive coordinator. They fired their GM, their general manager, the guy that's making all the moves behind the scenes, yet they come in, they're winners of 4 straight. They are red hot. And as we said, a lot of that is due to the ground game. They really do have an advantageous matchup if Derek Harmon cannot go. However, as we talked about in the beginning, Harmon, he looks ready to go. He is going to practice this week. It's going to come down to a game time decision. They're going to test that knee. They're going to see what's going to happen on Monday night. So we will see how everything goes. It is going to be a great game. Now, let's open it up for some questions. Let's get into the chat. You guys drop any questions that you want, what you want to hear about this Dolphins game, this Steelers game, about the weather, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, whoever it might be. Let's get into it. So let's go. Dolphins are streaking. Do we think the Steelers can contain A-Chain? So that's a great question. Now, with A-Chain, he has been banged up a little bit. He was practicing today. He's going to be in there. He's going to make it happen. I believe he's going to go. You talk to Miami people, they expect him to go. The question is, how healthy is he? Because if there's one knock on A-Chain, he's going to go out there and he's going to run the ball at will. He is going to break tackles. He is slippery. He is one of the fastest players in the league. He fits perfectly into that wide zone scheme that we were talking about. So what do you need to expect from A-Chain and from the Steelers is that when he gets to the perimeter, you better be able to rally. You better be able to tackle, because he is so slippery that if you get him in the open field, he might strike up the band. He might hit his head on the goalpost from any point on the football field. The Steelers' game plan has to start and end with not letting A-Chain get to the perimeter, because if he does, it's going to be exactly what you saw with James Cook. They're very similar archetypes, very similar run schemes. They're going to force those corners to come up to defend, to make tackles. They're going to put Patrick Queen and Jalen Ramsey and those safeties and those linebackers in a bind, and they're going to come out here and they're going to ask for the Steelers to tackle. So it's a great question. The Steelers, they have to 100% get out there, make some big plays, make some tackles. And honestly, this is one of those games where the Steelers, they're going to have to force some turnovers, because if that run game's not working with how much better the Dolphins are playing on defense, you as much as you got to go out there and target DK Metcalf, the Dolphins know that, right? This isn't going to be the Ravens game. If we're being honest here, DK Metcalf had a great game. You know why? You go back and watch that film. For whatever reason, the Ravens dared DK Metcalf to go out there and beat him, dared Calvin Austin to go out there and beat him. They said, you know what? We're going to play tight man coverage. We're going to see exactly how good you are, DK Metcalf. We don't believe, Aaron Rodgers, that you can still throw the ball the way you once did. Well, obviously, they found out. They lost the game. So for the Steelers, you got to rely on stopping the run. You got to rely on the run game. Thoughts on the TJ Watt news? Yeah, TJ's been banged up a little bit. It's something to monitor. You know, he's missed some time with a toe. He's missed some time with a lower body in practice. Hasn't really affected him in the game that much. Now, as I said earlier, with talking about him going out there, stopping the run, doing his best, he has not been the same player in terms of his get off this year. There's no way around it. You cannot say that. You cannot watch the tape. You cannot look at some of the advanced numbers and say, you know what, this is the same TJ Watt that was out here winning Defensive Player of the Year. It's simply not the case. Now, does that mean he's a bad player? Absolutely not. Does that mean that he cannot transform his game as he gets into the latter stages of his career? No, of course he can. What he has to do is start playing with more power. What he has to do is, when he comes out, whether it's this offseason, whether it's next offseason, he's got to transform. Because TJ Watt, everybody thinks, oh, lunch pail, guy goes out there, high motor. Sure, he's a speed demon. He has won his whole career by setting the edge, by getting underneath of blocks, by winning with speed, with pass rush moves, by having that elite bend, that burst, that get off. If you don't have that anymore, and teams realize that, like the Buffalo Bills, they're going to come out here and they're going to dare you to go and hold up at the point of attack. And to this point, TJ Watt has not been able to do that. I expect the Dolphins to go out there. I expect them to hammer those perimeter runs, and it's going to be on TJ. TJ's got to make those plays. TJ's got to be what we know that he can be when he's healthy. So, great question about the news. Honestly, toe injuries, we saw with Joe Burrow, he came back earlier than expected, but he's missed a lot of time. We'll see what goes on with Watt as he goes down the stretch of the season. Do you think the division will come down to Steelers Ravens week 18? No doubt about it. There's no doubt about that one. You know why? Because the Ravens, they still have some tough games. I mean, they got to play the Packers. They have to go ahead and play the Steelers in week 18 again. You've got an upcoming matchup with the Bengals, a rematch that they lost. It's not going to be easy, right? It's going to come down to these last few weeks. And you look at the Steelers schedule, it's not easy either. You say, okay, you got to win this game Monday night against the Dolphins, and you got to win the Browns game. You know why? Because there's a Lions game in between. A in Detroit, I might mind you. And yeah, sure. Is it the same Lions? Maybe not. The Lions are a good football team, right? They're in that precipice of being on the cusp of going and making another playoff run. They are going to treat that game at home as a must win. Then obviously, after that, what do we talk about? The Ravens to close out the season. Folks, that game last week was not a cut and dry Steelers win by any means. Obviously, they forced some turnovers on Lamar. The defense bowed up when it mattered. But outside of that outside of those DK Metcalf big time plays, big time throws, there really wasn't much cooking for the Steelers offense, especially not in the second half. I mean, they finished the fourth quarter with 8 total yards. That's not good enough. You can't go out here and win division games and win the AFC North when you're only rushing for less than 40 yards a game. It's not going to work. They have to figure something out. I 100% believe that this division will come down to week 18. Now, last week's game was huge for the Steelers. A lot of people, they didn't realize that if the Steelers lost that game on Sunday, their chances of making the playoffs dropped to just 18%. Now they're back in the driver's seat. They're back atop the AFC North. They have control of the division. It is going to be a big-time race to the finish. I think the Steelers get it done. You guys, let me know what you think. All right, what's the biggest key to the Steelers closing out the division? Well, honestly, this comes down to my opinion, having Aaron Rodgers play the way he did against Baltimore. Because if you look at Aaron Rodgers, ever since that Chargers game until the Ravens game, it was, boy, what happened to this guy, right? We talk about the broken hand in his wrist. We talk about the broken bone in his wrist. We talk about the fact that his ball location, he was out here throwing passes. He had the most scatter shot accuracy that we have ever seen from Aaron Rodgers. He was blatantly missing against the Los Angeles Chargers. He looked like Mason Rudolph. Like he didn't have it. Obviously misses the game. Rudolph comes in. I don't know what happened to him. Obviously 2023 leads the Steelers to the playoffs, completely fell off. Forget that. We were talking about getting Will Howard in there because if the Steelers were going to go down, you might as well see what you have in Will Howard. However, Rodgers, obviously much better. He's been healthier. He's looked better as the wrist has gotten better. I think that with Aaron Rodgers playing the best that he's played last week, he's got to be the key because the Steelers, for whatever reason, if they're not in their jumbo personnel, they cannot run the football to save their lives. They just can't. They have to have Darnell Washington out there on the perimeter. They have to have Spencer Anderson, the backup left guard, in there, setting a firm edge, going out there, making plays on the perimeter. Because if they don't, it's just 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Doesn't matter if it's Kenny Gainwell. Doesn't matter if it's Jaylen Warren. You name it. They put people in there. They can't get the job done. So what that tells me is that if the Steelers are going to win this division, it's got to come down to Aaron Rodgers making plays, to Aaron Rodgers being vintage, to making those throws that we've seen him make. Now, is that a lot to ask from a quarterback who just turned 42 years old? No doubt about it. But the Steelers, they knew what they signed up for, right? They put all their eggs in the Aaron Rodgers basket when they waited until the very end. They went through their entire free agent process without a quarterback. They signed players, they went through the draft, and they said, you know what? We believe Aaron's going to come. We're not going to draft a quarterback until the 6th round. We put all our eggs in that basket. And quite frankly, folks, it is now time for them to see why they brought in Aaron Rodgers. So that is, in my opinion, what's going to determine who wins this game who wins this division down the final stretch. This is a tremendous question. People are going to talk about Tomlin, but what do we think about Omar Khan being on the hot seat? This is something that, frankly, we've been talking about on the channel for a little bit. Now, I want to preface this. There is not one decision that gets made in Pittsburgh that is not signed off by Mike Tomlin. That's how it's been for the last few years, ever since Kevin Colbert left, probably even before that. The Steelers do not make decisions unless Mike Tomlin signs off on them. However, Omar Khan came in, and you want to talk about his free agency, you want to talk about his draft class, hits, misses, whatever. Folks, go look at those last three drafts. They have not been great. They are not what we are accustomed to seeing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Broderick Jones, right? Obviously, he's on IR. He's got that stinger. He's probably not, well, he's definitely not going to play the rest of the regular season, probably not going to play into the playoffs. Folks, Broderick Jones, before that, he was average as the day is long. This wasn't like they found a stud that they traded up for, mind you, at the left tackle position. He simply wasn't that great. You can say that some of that's on the coaching. They put him at right tackle instead of left tackle at first. I don't disagree. However, you go look down the path at the draft, at 2023, Keanu Benton, right? We thought after his rookie season, this guy was going to be fantastic. Folks, we talked about it earlier. There's a reason why the Steelers have led up 200 plus yards on the ground the last 2 weeks. They cannot stop the run up front. That is Keanu Benton's job. He has not done well. Joey Porter Jr., been up and down, but honestly, he's a solid starter. He's someone you keep around. But then you look beyond that in the 2024 class, right? Troy Fautanu. That is the best pick of the Omar Khan era. He has settled in nicely at right tackle. He looks like a franchise guy. But Peyton Wilson at one point, he was supposed to be this season the Steelers' second inside linebacker alongside Patrick Queen. Folks, Malik Harrison is starting over Peyton Wilson in base downs because they don't trust him against the run. He's obviously, he's got a lot of tackles. He's great in sub. He's great in dime, nickel, whatever you want to say. But he was supposed to be a starter. He's not a starter. And then you look at this year's draft class. Derek Harmon, he's been great, no doubt about it. They need him out there to stop the run. But what about after that? Caleb Johnson. Caleb Johnson was supposed to be the Steelers' next Le'Veon Bell. And he might write off any rookies after their rookie year. It's far too early. But Caleb Johnson cannot get on the football field, folks. Caleb Johnson has been inactive at times this year. What's the most noteworthy Caleb Johnson play, if we're going to be honest? It's that botched kick return that he had against the Seattle Seahawks. He has not been anything to write home about. And then you look beyond that, Jack Sawyer, he's mixed in some. Y.A. Black, he's played a little bit. But there just haven't been a ton of hits in these last three drafts since Omar Khan took over. Beyond that, the free agent signings, Patrick Queen, he's been up and down. I like Patrick Queen. When he's on, he's been really good, but he's been up and down. And then the big one, the one that we got to end on with Omar Khan, because it is a great question. How in the world do you trade away George Pickens, who is out here producing as if he's the best wide receiver in the NFL, and you do not have a backup plan? Okay, here's another one. Roman Wilson, you hope that he would step up, that he would be that. Roman Wilson was inactive last week for Scotty Miller. For Scotty Miller, who has one reception on the season. That's not good enough. Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin III, you needed another wide receiver. He should have known, whether it was the draft, whether it was free agency, whether it was the trade deadline. I mean, they got outbid for Jacoby Myers. I mean, that's not Pittsburgh Steelers football. Omar Khan, I do believe that there are some serious questions because, sure, has Mike Tomlin's coaching been great? If they lose out, obviously you got to talk about him moving on. But Omar Khan, he's got to answer some questions too, because what we've known, why the Steelers have been so good for so long, is because they draft and they develop better than any team in the league. And right now, that's just simply not the case. Did we ever, this is a good one. Did we ever figure out who Aaron Rodgers is married to? Absolutely not. Aaron Rodgers he's kept that very, very hidden. He is very personal, very private in his personal life. He's worn that wedding ring. People have asked him about it. He just, for whatever reason, I don't know what the deal is. He will not get in to who he's married to. Some people, there's some controversy or some conspiracy out there that he is just making it up. I don't know. I'm not going to get into Aaron Rodgers' personal life. Yes, I would say that he is married to the game. So great question. Funny one. We'll see if we can find any more information on that one. Now that Philip Rivers is back, should the Steelers consider bringing in Ben Roethlisberger? That's it's a funny one because Ben has talked about multiple times on his podcast that he would consider, if the timing was right, about coming back and playing football. Now you have Aaron Rodgers. As we said, he's playing great. I don't expect them to make any moves to obviously to obviously put in Will Howard or Skylar Thompson or whoever the case might be. They're going to stick with Aaron Rodgers. Ben Roethlisberger, that's a funny one. If Ben Roethlisberger has a better chance of coming back and being the offensive coordinator than he does being the quarterback, because if Steelers were to lose out, folks, it's going to get ugly. I don't think Mike Tomlin will get fired. I don't think Mike Tomlin will ever get fired, but they would definitely make some changes in that coaching staff. Terrell Austin, Arthur Smith, DB coaches, wide receiver coaches, they'll probably hit the road. You'd be looking at some new guys, and you got to wonder if Aaron Rodgers, if Ben Roethlisberger would consider coming in and taking over. So certainly, he's only 43, which is funny because Aaron Rodgers just turned 42, right? So obviously, Philip Rivers is 44. Philip Rivers is a granddad, folks. Philip Rivers' oldest son is, I believe, the same age or maybe even older than Tyler Warren, his new starting tight end for the Colts. It's just wild to think about. Obviously, I think Tom Brady and Joe Flacco, they gave these guys too much confidence. They told them they could come out here and play at a high level. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, those guys are outliers. I think, Ben Roethlisberger would be better off taking it slow and enjoying what he's doing with his podcast and his golf game. Oscar Perez says Mike Tomlin needs to go. We made a video back on the channel a little while ago. I've been very slow. I'll be the first one to admit. I have been very slow to say that Mike Tomlin needs to go, that Mike Tomlin's been the issue, that Mike Tomlin's been the problem. But I'll tell you this much. If they were to lose out, if what we saw against the Buffalo Bills were to happen, I don't know, against the Detroit Lions, or if that were to happen in the last week of the season against the Baltimore Ravens and they didn't make it to the playoffs, you got to take a long, hard look in the mirror if you're Art Rooney. Is this the organization that we are supposed to be? Because the answer to that is absolutely not, folks. You go back, anybody who's seen James Harrison and his reaction, obviously stick to A2ZSports.com. We cover all that. We've talked about him on video. He has been livid because what's Mike Tomlin's famous saying? The standard is the standard. Well, when the standard has become just getting by, just scraping by, just making it to 500, just finding a way to get into the playoffs and getting bounced round one, you got to start looking around. You got to start asking the hard questions because, folks, they haven't won a playoff game since 2016. We are about to go to 2026. That is indefensible from the Pittsburgh Steelers. You cannot be an organization that has 6 Super Bowl banners, tied for the most in the history of the NFL, and you are struggling to win playoff games. It doesn't work. A lot of people, they think that Tomlin only won Super Bowls because of the teams that Bill Cowher and Kevin Colbert built. Obviously, if you really know the NFL, there's so much turnover year to year that the fact that he won one in 2008 and then went back to another one in 2010, I don't think that there's any doubt about the fact that Mike Tomlin is a good coach. And all these national media, all you ever hear is if Mike Tomlin was fired tomorrow, he would have a job within the hour. And I totally agree because it's hard to find good head coaches in the NFL. It's not an easy job. There's only 32 of them, and most of those guys don't do well at it. Mike Tomlin has proven to never have a losing season. That immediately puts you in that upper echelon, puts you in that elite tier of coaching. However, the voice might be stale. The timing, it might run dry in Pittsburgh. These last 4 weeks are going to be huge. What happens these last 4 weeks are going to determine Mike Tomlin's future because I don't know how many people know this, but the Steelers, Art Rooney, Omar Khan, the Steelers brass, they will be deciding Mike Tomlin's future this spring, this offseason, because he has a contract tied to the team through 2027. Barring a sudden retirement, barring him just getting out of town, going and, I don't know, maybe taking the Michigan Wolverines job, who knows, he's going to be back in 2026. However, the team has to decide this offseason whether or not they will pick up or decline his 2027 option in his contract. So that is going to make for a very intriguing offseason storyline. And it's really going to come down to what happens these next 4 games. And honestly, even if the Steelers were to get in, even the Steelers were to make the playoffs, if they get bounced again, are we sure that Mike Tomlin is staying in 2027? I don't think so. I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out. John says, my issue with Tomlin is that 19 years, no coaching tree. John, that is a fantastic point. And a lot of that comes down to the fact the way that Mike Tomlin has built his teams, right? Mike Tomlin, does he know scheme? Is he very intellectually bright with defense? 100%. Anybody that says that, they don't know what they're talking about. He is. However, Mike Tomlin has always been a players over scheme kind of guy, right? He wants to play static coverages. He wants to play very basic, very fundamental things on the defensive side of the ball, his expertise. He wants to run the ball on offense. He wants to take shots off play action. He wants to play an old school brand of football. Sometimes that works. Sometimes when the players aren't as good as we see this season, it doesn't work. Because if you're putting all the pressure on your $41 million a year player, TJ Watt, to go out there and make plays, and he's lost a step like we saw in the Bills game, well, guess what? Now your defense is water through a sieve. It's Swiss cheese. If you're putting all this pressure on Darius Slay at 34 years old to go out here and make plays at corner, to think that he can guard Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on an island one-on-one, and he doesn't do it well, you're going to get burned the way they did that first time around against the Bengals with Joe Flacco. So that is the issue. You can't have a coaching tree when your defense and your offense is predicated on just having better players. And it's really a global issue. It all ties together because, as we talked about earlier with Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin, if you miss on the draft picks or you miss on the free agents and you don't have an elite scheme like a Kyle Shanahan or a defensive scheme like we've seen Jesse Minter out there in Los Angeles, if you don't have those elements and you're all about having players on the field and those players have regressed, you get a 6-6 Steelers team. And honestly, we're going to see how it plays. A win is a win in the AFC North. It obviously means a lot for the Steelers, but guys, we got to wait and see how it's going to look, because if they lose out, or even if they win 2 games and they finish the season, 9-8 or miss the playoffs, you got to start asking those tough questions as we talked about. Yeah, that's another one. The fact that they lost to the Jaguars in the Killer B era. Yeah, I don't know how in the world, when we talk, that's another thing with Mike Tomlin, how you had those teams back in the day where they have the Killer Bees with Brown, Bell, Ben, and yet the defense is the problem, right? And that's kind of been the issue with the Steelers. They have never, under Mike Tomlin, since that, early time in the first few years that he took over, been able to put all the sides of the football together, right? You have to have an offense and a defense that plays complementary football. When Big Ben is in his prime, out here throwing for 500 yards a game to Martavis Bryant and Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell's the best back in the league, and you have the offensive line that is so good with Ramon Foster and David DeCastro and the left tackle and all these guys and Marquise Pouncey. The defense, you have Ryan Shazier, who's about the only good player, and then he went injured, and it got even worse. It just hasn't ever clicked. It hasn't ever gone all the way together. The closest they got was, obviously, as we talked about, that Jaguars game. They get blown out, or they came back in that game, but wasn't pretty. They just haven't been able to put it all together. And then you go to the 2020s, right? And prior to this year, the last couple years, 21, 22, a little bit of 23, you had the best defense in the league. You had a defense that was out here with TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and all these guys in their prime, Alex Highsmith, Minkah Fitzpatrick before he left, and they're the best defense in the league. They look unstoppable, but you got guys playing quarterback like, Kenny Pickett, who honestly, he was probably better than some of the stuff they had lately. Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubisky, Scott, you go down the list, it just hasn't been pretty. So that is definitely a huge problem. The fact that they have not been able to get both sides of the football together. And this season, they thought they could. They thought they could give it a run with Aaron Rodgers. They thought that they had enough with Metcalf, that the young guys on the offensive line would come together and that the defense would play at an elite level. Barring that happening these last 4 weeks of the season, I think it's safe to say that that is simply not the case right now. All right, we'll wrap it up with John. Steelers can't stop the run on Monday, they lose. That's absolutely true. We've talked about it in the opening. It's going to come down. This is what Mike Tomlin likes to call big boy football, high leverage situations. This is what he's built his team around, what he's built his team for. If you go out there and let the Miami Dolphins, folks, as we talked about, a team with Tua Tagovailoa at quarterback, who have never won a game when it's below 40 degrees. If you let them come into Acrisure Stadium, where it's going to be in the teens, on your home turf on Monday night, which Mike Tomlin is 21-4 all time on Monday night, by the way, folks. The Steelers don't lose on Monday night under Mike Tomlin. Very rarely. They almost never lose at home. So if the Dolphins come in and you let them pound the rock and do that, all that talk that we had about after the Bills game, all that talk about Mike Tomlin's future, you can bring it right back up because 100%, absolutely, it's not going to be a good talking point on Tuesday morning. If the Miami Dolphins come in there and run for over 200 yards the same way the Bills did, the same way the Ravens did, folks, you gotta take a long look in the mirror. You're paying way too much for Cam Hayward, for TJ Watt, for Alex Highsmith, for Nick Herbig. He's on his rookie deal, but he's too good of a player. For Keanu Benton, rookie deal. If Derek Harmon's back, if they lose this game because the Dolphins go in there and run the football at will, you got to have some real conversations. You really do. You really do. But all right, guys, I think that's going to do it for our first go round here. Great time. Looking to do this every week. Every week now, Thursdays, 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. We will be back. TikTok Live, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. We will be broadcasting live from here, breaking down what's going on in Steelers land. Appreciate all you guys joining in. Have a great week. Go Steelers. We'll be back next week, hopefully, to discuss a win on Monday Night Football.